I'm Frank Lipo, Executive Director of the Historical Society of Oak Park and River Forest. Welcome to Oak Park River Forest Museum. 77 and Beyond starts now.
That was Frank Lipo from the Oak Park Lake Forest Museum. Thank you, Frank, for introducing the episode today.
Yeah, buddy.
Welcome to another episode of 77 Flavors.
First one to ever introduce the podcast.
Yeah. If you are new here, thank you so much for joining us. Every week we dive into a piece of Chicago history and beyond.
And beyond.
If you are not new here, thank you so much for coming back
Yeah,
today.
if you're not new, what you doing? Sorry.
What do you mean?
If you're not new, if you're not new.
If you're new.
Wrong. I said that wrong. If you knew.
That's okay.
Shout out.
Welcome. We're happy to have you. If you're not new, thank you so much for coming back. Your support means everything. We can't do the things that we do without you. So we're so happy you're here. This week we went to Oak Park and beyond. This is the beginning of a new series here. We're going to visit a few of the surrounding suburbs that feel more like super close to the city to me.
Yeah.
I feel
you can
like
claim. You can claim.
yeah.
I give you a pass.
Oak Park you can claim.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, I got some stuff.
Yeah. But before we get into the episode, I just wanted to remind you that we have a weekly Substack that goes out. It is a companion piece to this episode. So if you want to kind of learn a little bit more, see some other sources that I might link in there. Sometimes there's nothing too much different from the episode. It's more of my opinion, you know?
Yeah.
But
related.
it's a fun Substack. And if you subscribe to the Substack, as opposed to going through the show notes, you also get first access to any events we're having. So we have an upcoming dinner on July 28th that is at Hermosa in Hermosa, where Chef Ethan and Chef Sarah Stegner from Prairie Grass Cafe are cooking a special dinner, and they're donating the proceeds to our nonprofit. We'd love to have you. There's a couple tickets left, I believe. And you would get access to things like our tours. So July, what's the weekend? 29th.
Yeah.
Whatever that weekend, Saturday or Sunday is. This is why you should subscribe, because I don't know it off the top of my head. We are doing a tour of Pilsen with the What the Girls Are Doing.
26th. I'm wrong. Yeah, it's the 26th.
It's
next.
If you're listening to this on Monday, it is the coming weekend.
Yes.
So
Okay.
so you would learn about that through our Substack, or if you don't want to do any of that and you just want to read the show notes on the website, our website has a brand new page on it now. We have an events page on there.
Clean.
It looks really
Shout
good.
out to Cass again.
Cass and Sierra, they always do such a great job. They've built out, obviously, if you remember, our entire branding on our entire website.
Yeah.
And we added a new page. We added an events page. So
Finally.
Please go check that out. It'll grow as we get more and more stuff coming through. But those are my updates.
Yeah.
We had a fun packed week this week.
I feel like we just were always outside.
Yeah.
Dealing with the small. The
Yes.
small. Yeah.
Horrible.
I hope y'all good out there, because it was
safe.
treacherous.
Stay safe, because Thursday, Friday was pretty bad.
Thursday was whoo.
Yeah.
I remember walking outside and we saw it. Like it was sunny, bright day, kind of hazy.
Mm-hmm.
Then it got darker. Like in the next
darker,
30 minutes,
and
and then darker.
Yeah. it was
And I'm
really
like,
bad.
let me go ahead and take the dog out. And thinking about how early that is. I didn't even take the dog out yet. It was getting dark. I walked out there immediately. I was like,
Smells like smoke.
and I can only imagine, like, you know, I feel like I got like an acute case of asthma. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like not severe, but just it's something there. My mama got asthma. I was like, yo, if people got asthma out here, y'all got to
bad.
be careful.
Yeah, wear a mask. It helps, or stay inside if you can.
Man, but also people in Canada, man, I'm saying y'all going through it right now, man.
Canada, all the East Coast.
It's
It's pretty bad.
Yeah, it's
Global
rough.
warming, y'all.
Global warming.
These wildfires are
They real.
they're not a
real.
joke.
Yeah.
But we managed to do a couple things outside. On Tuesday, we actually went to the Hillside Summer Nights, which Hillside is one of the the beyonds that we're visiting in this series. What's a series?
Yeah.
Anyway, series plural. And so because we've already done the interviews and we filmed the episode already for that one that's coming out in a couple weeks, but they do these summer nights, and this past Tuesday, the 14th, was their first one.
Yes.
And they had the band Chicago.
Yeah.
One of the members from the band Chicago was out there.
Yeah.
It is such a fun experience.
Right.
They have vintage cars out there. People bring out their vintage cars.
Some of them ain't vintage. Yeah, I saw a McLaren out there.
I know there was some really cool
Bunch of
ones.
Corvettes.
Bunch of Corvettes. Some old cool ones.
Bentley.
Some yeah. Oh my God. And then they have food from the restaurants in the neighborhood.
Then a shop.
And then there's a market.
Market.
So where like makers come and between the market and the food is the lawn where the stage is set and people were just sitting out there. It was such a fun time.
You got some stuff?
I did get some stuff. I got a ring. I got a purse.
Where's the ring at? Hold on, let me see. I ain't
I'm
see
not
the ring.
wearing it.
Oh, okay.
It's in the room. But
Snuck that one in on
I
me,
got a
boy.
really cute zebra striped purse from one of the vintage dealers there. Dario got some
Hot Wheels.
Hot Wheels.
Batmobile Hot Wheels, y'all, before y'all want to get judgy. You know, yeah, they were vintage Batmobile. I saw it instantly. I was like, how much is this? Give me that. Give me that.
There's some people making some cool things out there.
Yeah, that same seller had some dope artwork from what is it, China? Chinese, Japanese artwork that was
I believe
threaded.
it was Japanese.
Japanese.
And it was like using fabric on canvas.
Yes, and it looked painted, but
but it wasn't painted.
you look
It
up close and it was threaded.
Like it was
God.
It wasn't embroidery per se because it was like sheets of fabric and then there was like thread over that.
Yeah.
It was really cool.
It was
really
crazy,
beautiful.
and colors were popping.
Yeah. So they do these. There's 4 more. So there's a total of 5. 4 more throughout the summer, and it's every Tuesday
From this episode, y'all.
From this episode, yep. So if you're listening on Monday, tomorrow they have one. August 4th they have a Prince one, and I think we're gonna try and go back to that one.
I'm trying to go there.
It's called Purple Night. So I don't know. The mayor is super nice, and
Chef Tamburino, Chef Tamburino,
Mayor
Mayor Tamburino.
Tamburino. Everyone that works for the mayor's office is just the best.
Yeah, they cool.
Yeah, we had a great time. I loved going out there.
Yeah.
And then the next day on Wednesday, I guess we didn't do shit on Wednesday, but Thursday, I went to the University of Chicago. They had so if you don't know, the University of Chicago, their library is open to the public. All you need is an ID to go inside. And they have programming at their special collections, the Kim Park special. Is that what it's called? Kim Park Special Collection?
Is it the Hannah Holborn?
Hannah Holborn Special Collection is the thing, but Kim Park is the name of, like, when I because I'm
notes.
Huh?
I said we'll put in show notes.
Oh, it's the Kim Park program.
Yeah.
So I'm signed up for their newsletter. So I get their like weekly newsletter with all of the things that are happening. Sometimes it's more than a week, once a week. They send out like what programming they have and if it's open to the public or if it's just for students.
Yep.
And this one was one that was open to the public. It was a zine making class, which if you don't know what a zine is, it's like a mini self-published or small published magazine.
You got to add it to the Substack. So people
I know. It was so fun to make. The person that was giving the class she makes her own zines. And I'm like, you need to have like 50 more of these because it was like the sign up was done so quick. Like it was full super quick, the workshop, and there was a long wait list.
Yeah.
So I had a great time. And our friend Cairo works for the Kim Park programming. So I just loved seeing her.
It was a household name on this podcast.
They also have something coming up soon they were looking for volunteers for the Pullman Railroad Days because Pullman, it's the 100 year of electric rail this year. And so that's coming up soon. It is July 25th and 26th is the Pullman Railroad Days. And we're going to try
July
get
what?
out there. 25th and 26th.
Oh my God. Why is these weekends so packed?
I know.
Man.
We're going to try and go on the 25th and see if we can get out there.
Slide through.
Yeah, for a little bit. I have to see it. I want to see what they're doing. They are looking for volunteers if you'd like to volunteer for that.
Yeah.
And then let's see, what else did we do this weekend? I'm like, I'm trying to think of like what would people be interested in.
Well, if you're interested in Legos,
oh yeah, that was the last thing.
So
that was on my list. Legos.
My birthday was last Fridays ago, but Sarah got me 3 Lego sets. I went out the next day, got 2 more Lego sets, and then we went out this past week and got 4 more Lego sets. Addicting.
Yeah.
Addicting.
They are.
They are so fun. The collection. I'm learning this whole world.
Yeah.
Of Lego.
Also, I just realized it's not. You can't say Legos.
Yeah.
It's Lego.
But hey,
they're very particular people.
One dude let me know on the online. He was like, "Hey man,
you can't say Legos.
It's Legos, not Legos." But I mean, you know,
It's
okay.
Legos.
If I'm
saying Legos.
You know what I'm saying? I want to be like, remember where I'm from?
No, but I respect it. Like
I do because if somebody says 77 flavors. Oh, I don't know how you would mess that up, but like
my favorite joke is because Dario's name is often mispronounced. People
always
say Dario or
Durham.
I say his alter ego, his evil twin is Dario Durham.
I don't know why they just make me giggle.
So anytime he's being a menace, I'm like, there goes Dario Durham.
If you ever hear her say that, you know I'm acting a fool for some reason.
Being a menace.
I don't know what's going on. But anyway, enough about us. Let's get into this. I'm excited to talk about.
Oh my God, me too.
Anything outside of Chicago.
So fun.
Yes. We love Chicago. Obviously, we still gonna be doing it. But it's cool. It's cool to like get out and see the connections. To Chicago
for sure.
Not that this is what this is about. You know what I mean? We are telling their history. Right. But you know, it's cool if you want to, have some kind of like tie in how we do this. But so we are doing this Oak Park Beyond. I'm excited to get going.
All right, before we get going, I just want to mention that this specific episode is sponsored by Oak Park and Beyond. Thank you so much for making this possible. They also assisted us with scheduling the interviews for the rest of these episodes. So, but they specifically sponsored this one. But this was so fun. I actually, I feel like I've mentioned this all the time, but I lived in Oak Park for a year. Yeah. When I graduated college, I moved to Mexico, and then I moved back. And for a year, I lived in Oak Park after I moved back, before I moved to the city. And I loved living in Oak Park. Yeah. I lived in the art district, very close to Austin. Yeah. And so you get like I felt like I was really close to the city, but I lived like right off the Blue Line. Yeah. It's just such a cool town. Yeah. Yeah. I really liked it.
Yeah. I've done comedy. Yeah. There. The Comedy Complex. Mm-hmm. I did comedy there a few times. So there's some times we had.
Oh, my therapist was in Oak Park. Shout out to Rachel.
Man, what's up with there was a food spot that we did. There was a collab between Soul and Smoke and this,
there was wasn't it pizza?
Pizza something. We got to get the name. We got to find the name because
I'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, got to shout them out proper because that food
was so good.
Man, it was good. So, I got some history that's pretty cool that we didn't necessarily hit on with Frank Lipo, because right after this we're gonna hand it over to him. Yeah, he's gonna take us home. But I do have some things. Yeah. This feels good to kind of go back to the old school way of doing it. Oak Park, first settled by Joseph and Betty Kettle Strings. They were
Kettle Strings.
Kettle Strings, yeah, yeah, Kettle Strings. They were the earliest white settlers in the area, now known as Oak Park. But they came from Yorkshire, England, and they had 2 children when they came from Yorkshire, England. When they crossed the Atlantic,
is it Yorkshire or Yorkshire?
Yorkshire. No, I feel like it's Yorkshire. Yorkshire, England.
I thought it was.
I don't
Yorkshire.
Know. That's what it feels like. Mm-hmm. I feel like that's something Dario Durham. He said I'd be up at the castle somewhere saying like that. But they had 2 kids, on their way over here. The reason why I bring that up is because they had 11 in total. Oh, they had 11 in total. We'll get there.
It's a busy household.
They settled in Baltimore first. They made their way Cincinnati. So they were doing their westward journey.
Yeah. They were on their house. What is it called?
What you mean, Hustle?
Little House on the Prairie.
Oh, yeah. You like that? Sarah locked into the new series. the reboot, really.
The reboot.
So yeah, they moved to this area in roughly. So I tried to put this together, make sense, because they built a home in 1835. And I'll get to that in a second. But they lived in 1832 in Cincinnati, and then it says a year after they start moving towards Chicago, which would put it at 1833, 34-ish, you know? And then they didn't build a house until a cabin until 1835.
It takes a while.
I know it takes a while, but like, how long did that travel? Did it take 2 years to travel? You know, so that's why I'm like, I don't know, you know, but right around that time they left and came to Chicago. Now that house they built in 1835 was located at 820 Lake Street, close to that side.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now that is the park that's there, and there's a plaque that you can go see. So we'll be, and it's close to the public library. So we'll be back out there,
I know
y'all.
exactly where that
Yeah,
is.
yeah. We got more episodes. We'll be back out there, revisit this part of the story.
Which also, stay tuned. We are doing a program at the library in October over there. So.
Yeah, yeah. So yes, all this information is is relevant. But yeah, so 820 Lake Street is what their house. I believe that was their first house because they had two homes. 1837. They purchased, Joseph purchased land, 173 acres worth of land.
Purchase.
Yeah, right. From the government. We know 1833 was the Treaty of Chicago, where land was, we know about that. yeah.
That's what it was.
Yeah,
they took it.
They took it. 173 acres of land from the government for $215.98. Boy.
But how much was that today? You know what I mean?
Hey, look, we still looking for 40 acres and a mule.
Okay, that's fair.
You know. I just want you get 40 acres anyway. They moved to Chicago. They built Atlanta, right? They started doing their thing. If this is what Frank Lipo is going to touch on.
That's not a lot of money.
How much is that?
It's like $4,000.
Or we could do that.
I have $4,000.
We could do that.
I mean, I liquidate something.
You know what I'm saying?
But I can get $4,000.
You said might have to
move some things around. But we can get 4,000.
Boom, bop, bam. You know, just a little shuffle.
Yeah.
So they start building up the settle here, right? They start settling here. Now their house also turned into like the kick it spot. It was like it turned into like a tavern and that kind of thing. So they were
a tavern in those times.
Yeah, the local. Well, I mean, but they was close to Chicago. Chicago was taverning up.
Yeah.
Matter of fact,
but Oak Park later on became like a no alcohol.
Right. Well, Frank gonna get into that.
What is that called?
Dry.
Yeah, dry.
Yeah, dry town.
Dry town.
But when they moved to Chicago, to this area, 1837, it was only 350, 400 people living in Chicago. Chicago had just become a city. Just become a city.
Not even a city yet.
And that was, that's when they purchased the land. You know what I mean? Like, so 1837, they were a city.
Yeah. It was a city.
They was a city. We don't know when in 1837.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because if it was March, okay, cool. You know, like March. But so not a lot of people there. They start building up there. Settling, I should say, and people kind of respected them, and small town.
Yeah.
They moved away to Chicago in 1843 for the schools and for the culture. We talked about this. When things were annexed. We talked about this when we talked about Austin. It's kind of why Austin was, and Frank is going to talk about that. But like, excuse me, y'all. Oak Park was the reason why they all, moved to, Chicago at the time or wanted the annexation. So it's interesting that they wanted the culture, and there's more to it. And, the amenities that Chicago was offering at the time, like water,
fire department,
like fire department, paved streets.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like lights, like
not. I mean, lights not yet.
Yeah, right. Not like
1947.
But they had candles.
I'm sure Oak Park had candles. Okay.
Oak Park, if y'all listen to this, I'm sorry. This is the part of the podcast. We have fun. But then they came back to Oak Park, the area known as Oak Park. It sounds like Prince. In 1855, and this is where they really started to build the community. Sorry about that. They started to build the community with the children that they had. A lot of kids, 11 kids.
You have to populate.
11 shorties. I don't know, man. That's a lot.
They raise each other, you have them far enough.
They had to.
Once the 13-year-old is 13 now. They can raise the 2-year-old.
Yeah, shoot, that's because Joe was on his building block, boy. speaking of Joe Kettle String building up the block, the first official name, because they had start building up, they start parceling off land, like, doing what subdividers do, right?
Yep.
They start building up the land community and everything like that. But the first unofficial name of the town was Kettle Strings Grove.
Oh.
Yes. Kettle Strings Grove. Yeah.
I mean, I would name shit after
Hell
myself
yeah,
if I
well.
could. If I, everyone is in
Durham
Durham.
Park. Durham.
There is already a Durham. You can't.
No,
name
not Durham Park. And Durham is in North Carolina.
Yeah.
So Durham, Illinois. There ain't no Durham, Illinois, is it?
I'm sure there is.
Nah, it can't be.
Let's
Look it up. Look it up. Look it up. Because if it is, man, then that's
there's a Cairo, Illinois. There's a Durham, Illinois.
My family slacked.
There is absolutely a Durham, Illinois.
Is it? Where's it at?
It's 4 hours away.
Oh, we got to visit.
It is to do what?
This ain't about Durham, Illinois, but we got to.
Oh wow! It's almost on the river.
Really, Mississippi?
Yes.
You
What
said
other
no.
river? No,
I
the
mean,
Chicago River
Ohio?
downtown. Don't piss me off.
Okay, fair. Anyway, Durham. It was Kettle Strings Grove, but they wanted to name the city, and actually it kind of was for a little bit until they realized they couldn't do it anymore. It was called Oak Ridge.
Oh,
Yeah, it sounds familiar because there is an Oak Ridge, and that's what they found out. And I believe they found out like how all the places that were like, what was it, Irving Park?
Right.
Wanted to name it to a different name and everything like that. You find out because there's a post office somewhere that had it, and that's what happened in this case. There was an Oak Ridge post office,
Right.
And I guess that was like the stamping point of, this is what we call it here. And so they couldn't do it, and they were called Oak Ridge. Now, the reason why it was called Oak Ridge is when the Kettle Strings and others started to settle in this area, they realized that there's a lot of oak in this area, and it was, again, over the ridge. That was a very...
I mean, that's how people name places. That's
exactly.
normal. Yeah. Cottage Grove.
Yes.
Like all of it. That's
As
all
they
I
should.
could think of. Bronzeville. Like
No, Bronzeville is different, though.
no, he was like,
I guess it
it's
was
a bunch of black people. here.
Black people, they look bronze. You know what I mean? Like, that's fair. That's a good one. I give you that one. It's on the board. It's on the board. But then they they couldn't use Oak Ridge, so they changed it to Oak Park. Now the second home they started building up. Once they got this land money, they started building up, and they had a second home that was near today's Oak Park Public Library. Now, my question is,
so they're not too far. Like the houses are not too far.
not
from
too
each other.
far, which I want to be clear, because like there's a Kettle Strings home that is being occupied by a family right now.
Right.
But it's the kids, the son, I believe, of the Kettle String. So one of their sons had a home, and this is their house. The Kettle Strings never lived there, or it was meant to be for the Kettle Strings son.
Gotcha.
So it'd be interesting. There's people that live there. I don't know if we can go up in that house. Yeah, because they actually are renovating that house and living in it. Which I don't know. But my question is, the house that's at 820 Lake Street, where the plaque is.
You think that's the original?
I think that might be the second home, the second spot. I don't know. It was unclear to me, and thank you. We're going to do more research and figure it out. But yeah, so interesting. That's all I
do
got.
research after the episode.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to do more episodes. We're going to
No,
be
we
by the
are.
park.
We are.
We're going to you see, put it in the Substack. They'll figure it out. But now that's my little
So
ramble.
so now this is our coming up as our interview with Frank Lipo, who is the director of the Oak Park Lake Forest Museum, which
River Forest.
Yes. Whoops, not Lake Forest. River Forest Museum, and he is just
Smart.
this like the funnest, smartest, most enthusiastic
Energy.
person that we've spoken to.
Yeah.
I just feel like he's so passionate about what he does, and you can tell.
Yeah.
And it just makes the experience so much more fun to be there. Like, I want to learn everything you're excited to teach,
Yeah,
you
for
know?
real. Yeah, for real.
And even the volunteers, I was speaking to one of the volunteers, and spoiler, I bought a bunch of Tarzan books.
Yeah.
I bought one of each because they were selling them for 50 cents.
Yeah.
So And I was speaking to her. She had previously been on the board at their old location. And so she's been part of the organization for like over a decade, I think, at this point, 15 years, I think she said. And so everyone there is just like passionate about what they're doing.
Yeah.
And I feel like just going, like when you go there, if you're watching, this might be one that worth for you to watch the video.
Yeah.
Because if you're listening on Spotify or Apple, you can have the video up. If you don't want to watch every single piece of it, because Daria's going to put, there's B-roll in there.
Yes.
You can see parts of the museum.
Yeah. I wish I could chapter this stuff off. You know what I can do is, because you can't chapter a video, which is weird. Why can't you do that?
I don't know.
I'll put the timestamps on where you could skip to see these different things.
Yeah.
So I'll put a chapter list visibly
In the note.
Yeah, visibly
In the description.
in the description and on the screen if you are watching. So just so you can know where to skip to.
Help. Because I think it's like, I think those a smaller museum that holds so much history still. Because like, it's not a field and it's not you know what I mean? Like it's not that giant, but it has so much of the town's history.
Yes.
In there.
From the town.
Like people have donated stuff. They constantly bring in things. They share their stories. There's a whole thing of archives that you can go, and Frank will talk about it in a little bit, but he says like people buy homes and then they come back and they're like, can I look up the history of the house that I just bought? It is such a rich town. And I just feel like you can feel that just by being in this one place. Absolutely. You know what I mean? Even if you've never walked around Oak Park. So it was just such a pleasure to be there. I mean, it was so fun. I had a great time. I want to go back. I want to go back and actually walk again through, because we were there for a few hours and we still didn't see everything. Right. Right. It's it's small but mighty. There's a lot to see in there.
And there's a Lego scavenger hunt.
There's a Lego scavenger hunt. Like the mini figures,
yes. There's a Lego scavenger. How perfect is that?
And they do a lot of other programming in the neighborhoods too. So I know that they do, like for Juneteenth, they had a bike self-guided trail. Yeah. Specifically about like Black folks that lived in the neighborhood that were like important to history, and we'll talk about one of them in the interview. But that's a tour you can take at any time. They still have it. You can walk in and be like, where can I get the information for this tour? And you can take it at any time. So, and it's like $5, I think, to get in there. Yeah. So
not bad.
It's a good visit.
Yeah. So,
but I can't wait for Frank to talk about this. I hope you learned something today. Let's get into it.
Frank, take it away. And now you think about it, you're like, oh, that's genius.
Well, the last thought about that is the inspectors. Tim just said inspectors in today before they do the drywall and stuff. And they came in and they're like, oh, this is so cool. Yeah. They're like, oh, because, there's drop ceilings to just like 8 feet or something like that. And this goes up 13 feet. Yeah. So they're like, oh, that's cool. It's cool. And then they would go, you'll probably have to cover it over though. And I'm like, what? And they said, for modern fire code, you shouldn't have this much wood exposed. And they have like what's called like 2-hour drywall. You should, especially for the staircase, you put on 2-hour drywall over it. And we're like, it was such a gut punch because we said, oh, we found all this stuff. Yeah. People walk in, they go, oh, cool. I haven't really seen a space quite like this. And luckily, the architect maybe, or maybe one of the contractors was like, I know there's a historic building code. So we follow the international building code. Right. But for historic buildings, they make some exceptions. And in there somewhere it says, if it's sprinklered, there can be some exceptions. And since we're already putting sprinklers in, they're like, okay, now you don't have to cover all the wood.
Oh my God.
So
that would have been horrible to cover it up. Because this is beautiful.
It's so cool in here.
Like, it is gorgeous. I mean, like, I know you refinished it, but like, just look how well preserved it is.
One of the things Oak Park's known for is some of the great old homes, and individual people who especially have like really done like a really detailed job trying to like restore elements that are missing or damaged or whatever. And the guy who did a local painter, there's a bunch of great local painters. This guy though, he's like, he did a couple tests and he goes, oh, there's like I can tell there he just did a quick test. And it has, they call it orange shellac. And shellac is made from like beetle skins or shells or something like that. So it's kind of a natural product. And he goes, people don't use this much anymore. They use polyurethane. It's a real durable. He said, so do you mind if I try this? So he did a little section. And when he put it on, it had a little more of that golden tone. Because most of it is painted. There's some sections that weren't painted because they put drop ceiling before they painted it. But it was like, oh, we got to do this now.
Yeah.
Once you see it,
Yeah,
just like
once you-
floor.
yeah.
Right.
So that's the starting budget wise. We're like, oh, we have this much money, but we're like, but we don't have to pay as much for paint down here.
Right.
Yeah, right.
You try to rationalize
Or the
it.
drywall.
Right.
Just so everybody knows, we are here with Frank Lipo, the historian.
Is it
Lipo?
It's Lipo.
Lipo, yeah, Frank Lipo for Oak Park, River Forest. So thank you for being on the episode.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for coming out to Oak Park.
You might be one of the smartest people that we had on the podcast. One of the top 5, at least.
Well, that's what a compliment. Thank you.
Yeah. You, Jeffrey
Jeffrey
Bear.
Bear.
Yeah. And that's probably it, actually.
No, we've had a lot.
Yeah, right. I know we got
Just
people.
kidding.
Yeah. But so we'll get to this space right here, but
Sure.
we're, Oak Park and beyond, right? And so we know there's a lot of historic things that come from Oak Park. And are you from Oak Park, from the area?
No, I'm like a fake native.
Okay.
My wife grew up here and like graduated the high school with her 5 kids all graduated from high school. And my 3 daughters graduated from high school. So like I've been here for a long time now.
Yeah.
But
You're an
working
honorary.
at the historical society, working at a local history museum, you pick up so much stuff.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody's research question you find out about when you're helping
Right.
them.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you think, oh, I was there.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it feels good to just be like, I was there.
Yeah.
I'm curious about the history of Oak Park itself because you're so close, like you're on the border of Austin, right? You're also Berwyn is right there. So tell us a little bit about how Oak Park came to be its own thing today.
Yeah, sure. So when land started being sold by the federal government in the 1830s, people all over today's Metro Chicago and all over the city neighborhoods, they all were like just buying up land. And, a lot of farming, a lot of other, small business or, a general store at a crossroads kind of thing. So all that just like, that from all your other work, there's all these kind of common history of people just buying a chunk of land and, deciding to make a life of it and, build up a community. So a similar thing happened in Oak Park as it was happening all over. But in the earliest days, Oak Park wasn't its own independent municipality in an urban area with a fire station. We're talking about old fire station.
Yeah, oh yeah, that's perfect.
But it was not an independent village, its own municipality until 1902. Sometime around in the 1850s, Cicero Township was organized. And as you know, from like Metro Chicago, townships were like almost the first form of government, a much bigger area. And often you see like New Trier Township High School or Proviso Township High School. And so Oak Park, what's now Oak Park, was part of the Cicero Township that actually stretched all the way like into Garfield Park. So that was this bigger Cicero Township.
Right.
And of course, what happened, as happened all around the city of Chicago, the eastern part of Cicero gets annexed to Chicago, and then a little bit more of Cicero. So by the 1870s, Cicero Township consisted of today's Austin neighborhood of Chicago, today's Oak Park, today's Berwyn, and today's Cicero. So that was the old Cicero. So 1870s on, Oak Park becomes much more like a bedroom community. A stop on the first train line that came out of Chicago happened to be the old Chicago Northwestern, which there was a stop in Oak Park. So as early as 1848, there started to be a train kind of to this area. And so by the 1870s, Oak Park started evolving to a little bit more, again, it always had a diversity of people and different income levels and stuff, but a little more elite. Some of the grandeur homes were being built. And Austin and Oak Park, the people who were elected to Cicero board from those two communities, Austin was always a little bit bigger. And there started to be, as early as the 1870s, 80s, there started to be a little resentment. Like, we want to be our own town.
Right.
Like the people in the Austin. So Oak Park's a place in the map. It's a post office. It's like, the First Congregational Church of Oak Park, but it's not its own government. It's part of Cicero Township, almost like a hamlet within the area. And so, long story short, Austin Oak Park was squabbling for a while. And in 1899, the year after our 1898 firehouse was built, in Old Cicero, Austin gets annexed to the city of Chicago. And the referendum where it happened, there was other questions. They don't do that anymore. But they had should all of Cicero be annexed to Chicago? Should just Austin, should Austin Oak Park? And just Austin was annexed to the city of Chicago. And when you analyze the election results, Austin voters wanted to stay in Cicero, and Oak Park voters were the difference. Because they weren't getting along anymore, and they said, we want to be our own town. And so if Austin's in Chicago, we can kind of incorporate. So within a couple of years, Berwyn and Oak Park formed their own towns. And so moving forward from that point, the same election where Austin was annexed to the city of Chicago, Oak Park and River Forest come together to form a high school. Prior to that, River Forest had no high school, and Oak Park had a high school as part of its like Cicero school,
Yeah.
because Cicero Township also did schools. Like,
Yeah.
so it's kind of like step-by-step thing. I think I'm saying, there's like
Yeah.
early kind of pioneer days,
Yeah.
Right.
battered houses,
Yeah.
there starts to be some finer, grander homes. And that's kind of a more of a bedroom community. People are taking the train in
Yeah.
Chicago. And then it evolves into, by the turn of the century, by 1900, Oak Park has grown from like 5,000 in 1890 to 10,000 in 1900.
Wow.
To
Wow.
20,000 in 1910, to 40,000 in 1920,
Yeah.
to 60,000 in 1930. So Oak Park was like doubling.
Doubling every
And
year.
so all of this like farmland on today, for people who aren't familiar, North Avenue is our north border.
Yeah.
Roosevelt Road's our south border. Austin Boulevard, the border with Austin, is to our east. And Harlem's the border to River Forest to the west. And that area was kind of central. Like, we're right here on Lake Street, like in Lake at Lombard and Oak Park. That's where the Green Line is,
Right.
right behind Lake Street. That's where the Chicago Northwestern, now the Metro, West Line is. So essentially, this central section really was building kind of from the center outward, north and south. So after 1900, the so-called South Prairie, south of Madison to Roosevelt, and the North Prairie, kind of north of Chicago Avenue, just kept on building up. And, different style housing, which is a real joy of Oak Park today, I think.
Yeah.
There's a diversity of people by choice, even compared to some communities, and also a diversity of housing styles and types.
Right.
So we have these big 1920s courtyards buildings. We have, really fine, grand single family homes, and also more modest single family homes, bungalows. There's sections of town that were a little bit more like tract housing, like happened like post World War II.
Yeah.
But even then, it was like smaller scale. It wasn't like, somebody maybe built 10 homes,
Right.
or somebody bought a chunk of land and built, individual homes down a block. So there's a little bit more visual diversity in the housing styles and types. It's not like, it goes on for miles and miles of all
Right.
similar buildings. It's kind of and of course, since we're an older community, essentially mostly built up by World War II, but there's been a bunch of infill development or, tearing down of certain buildings. But part of that's guided in our community, in Oak Park specifically, with a historic preservation ordinance since the 70s. So we have like 3 historic districts. And so it's not like some people think with historic districts that, you can't ever change anything. It's more the change is guided.
Right.
You can't just like put a big addition to the front of your house.
Right.
The idea is almost like the common spaces when you walk the streets.
Yeah.
And it's not typically, unless it's an Oak Park landmark, inside. So, you can do, a rehab and we take out the whole kitchen. It's not like, it's an historic building.
Yeah, can't do anything.
That's the balancing act, I think,
That's interesting.
for all these things, is how do you balance people's like individual property rights
Yeah.
and their own taste with some of the common good? Because we think, I'll speak for the whole community now.
Yeah, right.
A lot of people think Oak Park has a very distinctive
Yeah.
architectural style and type, and there's a
Definitely.
fair amount of tourism, here at Oak Park River Forest Museum, but we have, of course, the Franklin Wright Home and Studio. We have the Ernest Hemingway birthplace. There's been some efforts recently related to the legacy of Dr. Percy Julian and what should be done with the Julian house or the Julian legacy. So it's the idea of like different stories. And that's the best part of my job is when you're asking me earlier if I'm a native,
Yeah.
it's like, no, to me, it's always the stories. You tell people stories and it's like, there's always a new story. Somebody's walking in with a cool story. And people are contacting me all the time and saying, do you want this old scrapbook grandma had? And I was like, what is it? Oh, she graduated from the high school in 1924. And, there's all this original stuff. And it's like, we have this big exhibit on the high school history. Maybe we can put it right in a case, right?
Yeah.
So to me, the story's going on because the people who are living today, talking about your own family history, anybody talks about their family history, you always look back to your folks, your grandfolks.
Yep.
And I think a community is kind of like that. You look
Absolutely.
at what's happening like right now, and then you're saying, that's similar to what's happened in the past, or it's different.
Yeah.
Right.
And so there's always that kind of touchstone of, I think that you have some continuity over time. You want to have some continuity. But change isn't a bad thing, even from history. Right? You don't want things to be locked in time.
Right.
You want to change, maybe be a little more gradual and more respectful. And I hope that Oak Park doesn't physically change as much as some communities. We sort of, because of the historic districts, there's a little bit less tear downs than some. And I think that's important because even though a building might be old and need a lot of work, somebody can come in and put that work into it. And all of a sudden you got this cool house. So that's kind of the trade-off, I think, sometimes.
I love the fact that you can work on history, but keep it preserved, and it doesn't lose its status. We know Chicago, the moment you change one thing in Chicago, it loses the status in a heartbeat, right?
Yeah.
But do you find a lot of the residents, seeing that the community is close knit and they kind of look towards the elders, do they like the preservation of the way things were, even though they have that flexibility to add on to maybe, or do they keep things typically?
It's a really interesting question. I think this is true for probably a lot of communities, but I'll just, you asked about Oak Park, and what I know best related to some of this stuff is the joking answer, but I think it's half serious, is you ask 10 different people and there'll be 10 different opinions. I mean, we're an opinionated community and there are a lot of people with different opinions. I think as a community as a whole, the fact that they passed the historic preservation ordinance, and even though there's some pushback over time on certain aspects of it, I think, I find in my personal experience, like people will come here, I just bought this old house. Do you have any old photographs of it?
Yeah.
I want to do something with the porch, and it seems like it's kind of inappropriate the way the porch is now. Maybe you have an old photograph or a similar house. So I think there's a real enthusiasm by individual people, and not just for the single family houses. Like some people live in some, great old condo buildings, or even, you're renting, but you really think it's a cool building you're renting in, right? So people will come by and ask about the history of, wherever they're living. So to me, I think there's a lot of enthusiasm for the history. I think, like anything else, if it took a little bit longer to get a permit because you had to have a meeting, sometimes people just get annoyed.
Right.
I wanted to start construction in May and it's not till June now. So there's certainly some of that pushback, and I think it's legitimate that you kind of say how fast the process can be. Right. I was talking to the person who runs, is a staff member at Village Hall, and they were doing some studying, and there's it's a pretty high number. Over 90% of the permits are issued for changes, even without a meeting or anything, because it's it's this roof and you're replacing with a similar material. Boom. You're just, painting the existing, wood or whatever. So some of the permits are pretty routine.
Yeah.
So I think a very focused answer to your question is, I think there's a difference of opinion, but I think I would say the majority of people, and people over time have kind of sought out Oak Park a little bit for some of that history.
Yeah.
I was looking to get a cool old house, and I looked in LaGrange, Evanston, Oak Park, maybe Ravenswood, some Chicago neighborhood. So you kind of get that, if you're the type of person that appreciates old structures, historic buildings, Oak Park's one of the places you kind of think about.
Yeah.
Yo, right now we are here in Hillside for their summer nights that's lasting 5 weeks, including this one that you're watching right now. They got 4 more weeks going on, but let me tell you, there's so much to do here. They really put on a nice show. There's food, there's cars rolling by. There are the vintage cars. I mean, honestly, they got a McLaren here. They have a ton of Corvettes. I'm a Corvette stan. Very cool to be here. If you live out here in the western suburbs, make sure you get out here and check them out. They also have a Prince night, which is pretty cool.
Okay, the girl that runs this booth is really good at thrifting. I got this ring, and then I got this purse that matches my outfit. How perfect is this?
They do this for 4 more weeks from this video. And make sure you get out here. It's only a 25-minute trip from Chicago, and you can still party, kick it, and see some really cool cars. Watch the Corvette fly by.
I love that.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of older and historic places, we're in one, right? we're in one. This is Firehouse number 2, you say?
Yeah.
And
I don't think we even mentioned where we're at.
yeah, right. So we are at the Oak Park River Forest Museum, and this was the old Firehouse number 2.
Yeah. Cicero Firehouse.
Cicero Firehouse.
Yeah, because when it was built, it was part of Cicero Township.
Yeah.
So this was built in a different town.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. I guess it wasn't even. Yeah, but the reason I bring it up, this is a remarkable restoration here. You want to tell us about how they flipped the boards and that is just gorgeous.
I love telling the story.
Yes, I know. Yeah,
I'm living this, and I'm actually. When you work at a place like this, you watch people come in, and I do see a lot of people. It's a unique space because what we did is the Village Road Park, when it was created in 1902, after Cicero, Austin was annexed, and they kind of got their own independence. Of course, the first building they had was this 4-year-old firehouse. So this was a firehouse, and there's a meeting hall upstairs. And so what the village did is use it for all these different purposes through the years. But by around 2005-06, in that period of time, it was we're not going to use it for public works purposes anymore because they built a big new public works building on the other side of the tracks. So they were trying to figure out what to do with this. And so we had some discussions. And so we essentially signed a 30-year lease with a 20-year option.
Wow.
That would allow us to use this, at that point, pretty dilapidated building, old systems, no sprinklers. There had been at least 2 minor fires in this old firehouse over the years. And so we agreed to raise money privately so there wouldn't be tax dollars for it in exchange for the ability to be here that long. So no local taxes were used to in terms of building this
That's
out.
amazing.
And so we basically it took a period of time, actually from start to finish, almost 10 years of like fundraising. And we were able to raise upward of $1 million. And we kind of did a gut rehab, except gut rehab of the systems, because there was no sprinklers. So we put in sprinklers. There was an old boiler in the basement from the 50s. And so no air conditioning. So we put in the new modern ductwork. And we put geothermal, HVAC, dug 3 500-foot wells outside. So all new systems. But to your question, very focused way is we found under all these drop ceiling, because they'd used it for different purposes through the years after stopping a firehouse in 1916, found all of this wood, walls, ceilings, floor, but the floor wood was really damaged because it had been around for more than 100 plus years. And so we had a guy come in, Elm Flooring in River Forest, and he comes in, he goes, have you considered flipping the floors? And we're like, what? Well, flipping the floors? They're thick plank boards, because when this was built in 1898, it was kind of like a barn-like space because it was horse-drawn fire wagons. So we kind of had some trepidation. He's like, do you have a crowbar? And we pried up one of the boards, and you can see the underside because they're thick planks. They're literally this thick. And so by flipping them over, we're able to refinish, and you find it's like 1898 wood has this warm kind of honey brown, golden kind of tone.
It's gorgeous.
And so, so we have the walls, the ceiling, and the floors are the original wood, and yet we kind of said old and new, right? Even though we're a museum and we focus on history, you have the modern systems, but within the structure. And we hope eventually. I was mentioning. We're actually adding an elevator to the building, which will be ready by this fall, and some extra restrooms, so a little more, accommodate more of the public's visits. And we someday hope to do some more restoration work on the exterior, because there's some missing kind of cornice details across the front. But even sort of step by step as we can afford it, we're going to replace some glass on the second floor. That's like a beautiful, like arched glass that's been gone since we think the 60s or early 70s. So it's kind of fun. Also, because you can afford it that way, and also do it step by step, because we couldn't afford to put an elevator in right away, and we felt badly, and we were using the first floor for like meetings and stuff, because we want people to not be able to get to the second floor. So now the whole space gets activated, which is really exciting.
That's amazing. And you found the pole holes.
Yeah. So I was talking about the like drop ceilings down to like 8 or 9 feet in some places, and when we got to that top layer. One day I was walking to the building, and in addition to the money we raised, Lake Theater, which is a big theater here in town, owned by Classic Cinemas, the owners at the time, Willis and Shirley Johnson, we talked about funding, and they said, how about if we fund some of the demolition? Because we knew there's all these drop ceilings. Well, you got a crew, you could do that for a period of time. So I come in one morning, and they're prying off the drywall, and it's like half of it, you see a board over the circle. And we're like, we knew there must have been fire pole holes here, right? And so, and then we found the second one. We thought, there's one, but we figured out from some historical material in the newspaper, there was probably like a sleeping room and a break room, or like and so there's 2 rooms, so they probably each had their own fire pole, so people could be sleeping on one side and playing cards on the other side or whatever. And so it wasn't until a couple of years ago now that we researched it and made a replica fire pole. So that wasn't original. People say, it's so good you found the fire pole. I'm like, no, it's been gone since 1960. But I worked with some good crafts people who were able to like figure out like what would actually, be historically accurate. So it's really fun now. You have kids come, of course everyone wants to slide down. I'm like, our insurance isn't that good.
Don't do that.
Even firefighters now they've gotten away from that. So they don't want to have like workers' comp, bad knees and broken ankles. Right?
There's a ton of cases. We're walking around, and I'm like, I need 5 hours in here to look at everything. I feel like even though it's it just feels like you're covering so much of the town's history in just like this one is all cookbooks and that's the one I gravitated towards. I love to cook. So I'm like, what's your favorite kind of like case or exhibit that you've had recently?
Two favorites or bigger ones. Interesting thing for like local history museums in general, or museums, you have almost more off display. You definitely have like more off display. And we have this big research center. People research for their homes and their families and other topics. But the exhibits are tricky because I fall in love with it after we do it. You know, usually it's staff. We have 2 full-time staff or a part-time staff. You know, we have dozens of volunteers. When you came, there's a volunteer sitting here, and it's like when I'm working with them or a volunteer is working, and we sometimes have had like some outside consultants doing certain things. You fall in love with it entirely, but you know it's going to come down to you got to have some changes, et cetera.
Yeah.
So we just took down right before you came, just this week, this exhibit we had called Open House, The Legacy of Fair Housing.
Yeah.
Now, we're going to still tell those stories, you know, in the community, but we had it up since 2018, and it was time for a change. And we're also kind of redoing, as part of this elevator project, making like this meeting space upstairs. So I just fell in love, and I was kind of the co-curator with Sarah Doherty, who's a professor at North Park University. Liz grew up in Oak Park and was on our board at that time. And it was just so fun, like going down, and because I think sometimes like the more difficult history stories, you know, it's like people like, my grandfather lived around here. Was he one of the more racist people that didn't want black people living? You know, like people have like those kinds of thoughts. And so it was good kind of really just shedding light on, you know, good people, sometimes less than good people, but over time, how the community kind of chose to be a more diverse community. And so that you know, that we're still going to tell some of those stories, but it's taking down the house up there. We built like a house to show off that story. Was like kind of hard for me for a couple of days. I'm like, oh, man, but then you go, oh, the space is kind of nice now.
Yeah, it's open.
On to the next story.
There's so much to
and
do.
the other thing, we're kind of sitting in the space here. We work at the Oak Park River Forest High School, and we're just down Lake Street, you know, just really a few blocks. And we have high school students walk over and volunteer here. This summer, we have about 7 high school students who are volunteering. And one of the things that's amazing is we just talking to the administration, they had such great history that was kind of in one closet that they didn't access that much. And they knew it was important. They saved it.
Yeah.
And so we worked with them to first get the archives of the high school. So we have now, and you know, part of our addition, we have some extra storage space. We'll be moving that stuff in that new storage space is, and then at the same time, talking about the approaching 150th anniversary, which was the school was established in 1873 with 3 students. Three students in 1873. And so the first graduating class wasn't until 1877 with those 3 students. So we said, oh, we're going to do this in time for 2023, but we're going to keep it up for several years, kind of looking ahead to that 150th anniversary of the first graduating class in 2027. And so that's been a really cool thing for me. Is cool. My wife, I mentioned, my in-laws, my brother-in-law, sister-in-laws, my 3 daughters are all graduates of OPRF. And so you learn a lot looking through those old scrapbooks. And, you know, memorabilia, everyone likes a cool T-shirt or uniform from the baseball team from the 60s or whatever. Yeah. But the stories, like having a timeline or having some like prose stories, it's like, so I've told you asked me one answer, I gave you 2. Fair housing and the exhibit 1's gone, but again, we still have those artifacts, we're still going to tell those stories. And then the exhibit is still up. And you start to see people who maybe are just visiting relatives and they're like, oh, I was a graduate of OPRF. I've been gone for years. Yeah. And then all of a sudden I can see if I can find myself in the yearbook. We have a bunch of the yearbooks I didn't show you on the shelf over there. On top of the card catalog, the last card catalog of Oak Park River Forest High School.
Oh, we got to thumb through that. Yeah.
And, so it's kind of fun going through there and seeing, so that's
so cool.
I mean, it feels like I like the high school because you don't really see that as something that is kind of recent and when you talk about the history sake of it, aspect of it. But the people of Oak Park is something that, you know, I don't know, maybe our viewers and listeners may not know a whole bunch of this, but there's some really notable people from Oak Park or that have lived in Oak Park. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, it's a long list, and so everyone has some of their favorites. I think I'll start with the obvious ones, and I think more people know about them is, Frank Lloyd Wright, the architect, number of homes here, the largest concentration of homes and other buildings in Oak Park River Forest. So, wow, big local story, lived here for 20 plus years, et cetera. And then a little subsidiary story that you were pointing out on our wall is John Lloyd Wright, his son, was the inventor of Lincoln Logs, right? So you have like father and son, like 2 little creative stories. Then the other person's probably most commonly talked about as far as like famous Oak Parkers is Ernest Hemingway. Was born here. His parents were both graduates of Oak Park High School. Both sides of the family came like 1870s, after the Civil War. So there's a real rich, deep story. His paternal grandfather, Anson Hemingway, was a Civil War soldiers. A lot of people were in that era. He actually was an officer with black troops.
Oh, wow.
They, at that point, unfortunately, they had like white officers for
Yeah.
black troops, but so he was actually tied to the Civil War era and had.
Wow.
So you have like all these stories. They start getting into these big national stories, right?
Yeah.
So Hemingway, right? Boom. That's people talking. And Hemingway's birthplace is open for tours too, just like the Frank Lloyd Wright Home and Studio is open for tours. And Unity Temple, his building's open for tours. But then,
The temple is beautiful.
just really beautiful spaces. We do a fair amount. We have upstairs an exhibit on is the guy who wrote the Tarzan books, Edgar Rice Burroughs, lived here for not quite 10 years in like 4 different houses. He wrote the first Tarzan story on the west side, kind of by today's United Center.
Yeah.
He grew up in that neighborhood and then moved to Oak Park for a time, moved back there, wrote the first story, then came out here and lived in several places. So there's a lot of interesting, you can look at the work of Tarzan, but also he was known for John Carter of Mars. He was a very early science fiction writer that people, when they start looking to his story, they're like, I had no idea. He was like kind of a pioneer in that field too. So that's another person that there's historic sites around town. There's a couple of the homes that we lived in that have markers on them. We're working more with the community as a whole and with other partners and stuff, talking about the legacy of Dr. Percy Julian, African-American chemist, 100 plus, I think I'm shooting it short here. Might be closer to 200, 150 patents in chemical operations of various sorts, helping develop cheaper and better and compounds that led to glaucoma medication, rheumatoid arthritis medication that was really expensive, and he got a version of it that's much expensive. So Dr. Julian, great figure, moved here with his family in 1950. Twice his house was attacked, and bad moment in Oak Park history because as a black person moving to a community which did have a black population, very small, but even had its own black church from 1905 to 1930. So there was this idea of he's moving to the estate section. Whoever attacked his house twice, or it was the same person twice, we don't know. Nobody was caught. Bad news is that it happened. Good news is that's almost the start of our modern civil rights movement. That people are like, that's not right. The week after the first time it was attacked, a couple hundred people, a little bit less than that, and then it grew, showed up at the village board meeting and said he should be protected. Dr. Julian's a treasurer. He had been named the Chicago Sun-Times Man of the Year in 1950, right before he moved in, because people were aware of his accomplishments. He was about 50 years old at that time, kind of in the peak of his career. He was working for Glidden Paint Company. He was head of the research division. And within a year or two, he opened up his own research lab in Franklin Park, talking about the broader area, how the west suburbs are connected, Wesco County. So Dr. Julian, phenomenal. His wife was, he had a PhD, went to DePauw University in Greencastle, Indiana, got his master's from Harvard, went to the University of Vienna, got his PhD. He chose Oak Park and lived here from 1950 to 1975 when he died. We have a middle school named for him now, one of our 2 middle schools. And his wife, Anna Julian, was an incredible, one of the first women to get a PhD in sociology from the University of Pennsylvania. So, really accomplished people. But there's a lot of fun stories too. People like goofy stories. In River Forest, the Japp family, Japp, were the founders of Jay's Potato Chips. And after Pearl Harbor, December 7th, 1941, Japs became a pejorative term for Japanese because of, the sneak attack at Pearl Harbor. And so they changed it to Jay's Potato Chips, but still run by the family, lived in River Forest. The guy who invented Twinkies lived in Oak Park and then River Forest later. And the plant on Lake Street in River Forest was Continental Bakery, had a couple different names to it. They had these golden cakes. They'd put like fresh strawberries in, like strawberry shortcake. And that time, we're talking about 75 years ago and a little bit more, actually pushing 100 years ago now, I'm sorry. They basically didn't have the kind of refrigeration to get fresh strawberries year round. So like they had these cake and we got to fill it with something else off season. And they came up with like cream filling. And now they say, well, Twinkies might last forever.
Oh, wow.
And so he said he was traveling across the country. The story he told goes that he was on a train and he saw like this billboard for twinkle toe shoes. And he's like, Twinkies. Like he just came up with the name. And so, wow, like this thing that, everyone's, whether you love them or hate them or have no opinion, people know about Twinkies. And right here in Oak Park, this guy lived in the 1920s all the way till he passed in the 70s, maybe early 80s. So you have these people who did a bunch of interesting things. I mentioned talking about on this sort of wall of fame we have, and we have a painting of his on the wall. The guy who's one of the most famous University of Illinois football coaches, a guy named Bob Zuppke, Zuppke. Zuppke. He was a legend at University of Illinois. The field is still like Bob Zuppke Field. He started out as a high school coach in Michigan, came to Oak Park River Forest High School in 1910. And in 1910, 11, and 12, undefeated teams. And they're saying, they even did like barnstorming. They went to they played Fenway Park in Boston with a They went to the West Coast and played in the Seattle area. They'd hop on a train. They were just like barnstorming era. And after 3 years at this really big public high school, Oak Park was, Metro Chicago. Yeah. We were in the 20s, we were the third largest population behind Chicago. Cicero and Oak Park was number 3 in all of Metro Chicago. Wow. So, because we were 60,000 plus population then. Yeah. Naperville was a few thousand. Aurora was, they were very small communities and, at these satellites, further out away from Chicago. And so Zuppke got snatched up. It's pretty rare to have a coach go from high school to college. Yeah. But they said this guy really is, a great guy. And so it's like these stories of people who kind of left their mark in different ways. I mentioned the guy, Johnny Latner, the guy who won the Heisman Trophy when he was at Notre Dame. Started out as a star at Fenwick High School here in Oak Park. So in addition to all the Oak Park River Forest stuff, Fenwick High School is another high school. In that, obviously has a legacy of its own. And so you think about people who lived here briefly. Betty White. People talk about Betty White, right? She was born here in Oak Park, lived in an apartment for about 3 to 4 years of her life, the start of her life. And then her dad got a job in California. She never came back to live, but she visited because she had grandparents and a favorite aunt, and she'd come back and forth. And years ago, before I was even working here, there was correspondence with my predecessor, reached out to her, tell us about what you remember of Oak Park. And she goes, I still proudly say I was born in Oak Park. My aunt and uncle and my grandparents I used to visit. Wow. And a lot of people say you were born in Chicago, but there's Oak Park's part of Chicago, but different. And so she really, lived to be 99 years old. And after she died, we had an event in front of the Lake Theater the community did, because there was talk about having a 100th birthday party to see if she could come back. Yeah. She didn't make that, but we had a nice celebration of her life. So, these people that are here for their whole lives or just a few years, John Mahoney, the actor who died a few years ago, star of Frasier movies, he was in movies like Moonstruck. He chose to live in Oak Park. He was a founder of Steppenwolf, and he just liked living. He liked the town. He liked the Midwest friendliness. He would say that he didn't want to hang out in California. It wasn't his thing. He'd like to come back and sort of being semi-anonymous. People knew he was living in town, but people kind of respected his privacy, and so he could go to a bookstore, have dinner out. So I think it's that not just those ancient figures, people who lived here 100 years ago, the people who are choosing to live here now, and that's the fun part of any community, right?
Yeah. I think just listening to you speak and just knowing even more about, outside of Chicago's four walls, Oak Park still kind of has that mentality of we're still Oak Park, from back in the, late 1800s, right? And still moving in that capacity, right? Yeah. And has given a lot to society into the greater country. Ernest Hemingway, Tarzan is still blowing my mind, actually. Tarzan being made right here is we had that, and Wizard of Oz is crazy to me. And among other things, do you still feel like Oak Park is and River Forest are kind of those the old figures of themselves that said, hey, we want to kind of go to Chicago, but also we want to be ourselves? How does that, because it feels like
this is funny because, obviously a lot of communities, you got to be careful, because it's either too much, too much civic pride in a bad way, or arrogance or something. Because of course, people in every community, there's people come back, and sometimes multi-generational people. I think there's a large percentage of people who come back. Somebody was researching their house at one time, and where are you from? They just had bought a house, and I was helping them with research at that point. And they said, Columbus, Ohio. I think it sticks in my mind. I said, Columbus, Ohio, that's a nice place. I've only been through there, never been there. I said, well, what brings you to Oak Park? Well, actually, I'm coming home. I had different corporate jobs, and I got a chance to come to Chicago, and I thought it'd be fun to raise my family, back in my hometown. I really have fond memories. So there's that kind of, but I think this is a real interesting thing. I'll credit my brother-in-law. Before he was my brother-in-law, I think, before my wife, now my wife and I were married, and I think I was he was talking about, we were talking about doing something. And he said, "Oh, I can't help. I'm moving. I'm helping I can't, do what we're talking about doing. I'm going to be moving my friend out to the suburbs, like helping move, friend move, right? Out to the suburbs." And I'm like, "Oh, like, where's he moving from?" And he's like, "Oak Park." I'm like, relatively new to Oak Park. Then I'm like, Oak Park's a suburb too.
Yeah,
But
right.
the idea of like city,
yeah.
Chicago, and then Oak Park, and then other suburbs.
Right.
So there's a little bit of that. And there's truth, I think, in a couple levels, in the sense of we're an urban suburb. We're connected. We have the green line, the blue line, the metro line. Obviously, a lot of bus lines.
You can
connect
see the
down North
skyline
Avenue.
from like the edge of Oak Park.
I can walk outside the museum and see the skyline, as you're saying, right? So to me, it's like that's the beauty, and it's a kind of a balancing act of Oak Park. One of the beautiful things about it is that we have some blocks and neighborhoods that are like more like spacious lawns and like bigger homes. We have more modest homes with smaller yards. We have like 2 flats and 3 flats. Chicago. Chicago and all through and through. We have, more modern and downtown Oak Park apartment buildings built in the last 20 years that people really want, contemporary. We have a lot of 1920s courtyard buildings, which I'm partial to. Those big, they're bigger buildings, but they have the big central courtyard and, little breathing space, right? So I think it's like, and then there's infill like later. I mean, I personally I hope that Oak Park doesn't like wholesale raise neighborhoods for new stuff. I think it's got to be like a little more cautiously done. But, a house will burn down and burns down, or, things happen. And I think this idea of old and new, like I like walking some blocks and you go like, oh, there's some great like classic, all from the same era. And then, oh, that's kind of a cool house from a slightly different era. So sometimes because there was a side yard that it took decades for somebody to sell off and somebody built something later. I think Oak Park is the balancing act of being part of Chicago and proud of it, but also a little bit separate from Chicago and proud of that too. So it's a little bit, you're kind of holding those two things in your mind that are a little bit, to some people, maybe is a little bit like, are you part of Chicago or not? Well, yes, both. Like we're not, we also are. And I think through the years, it wasn't just one time back in the Austin days when Austin got annexed to Chicago. There's a couple other efforts through the years. Maybe we should just annex to Chicago. And when Evanston, stopped annexation that direction, Oak Park did a similar thing, because west of us in Cook County, there's some of the towns, Hillside, I can just go through. There's some settlement, but there's still some farmland and stuff. So Oak Park sort of became a little bit of, again, maybe this is too arrogant, but a little bit more of the capital of West Cook County, the bigger town, the older town, and our neighbors to the west. There's connections. When you looked at the history of it, Westchester, there's a bunch of Oak Park investors who are like buying land up there to build homes, right? So there's a connection among us. And back in the height when that Marshall Field building, we were looking earlier that this new Barnes and Noble just opened up in the old Marshall Fields building that we had. Oak Park and Evanston had these suburban branches of Marshall Fields, and we just got Barnes and Noble because it's been vacant for years, and everyone's excited about having a bookstore back in that building. And I'm like, when Marshall Field went in the late 20s, right before the Depression, from the 20s to the 50s or even to the 60s, people talk about Oak Park as being sort of the West Suburban shopping district. Even people would come from like Elmhurst, which is established town. They come because you can get like the branches of the Chicago department store. Across the street in River Forest was Weebolt's. They had a number of other branches of Chicago, Bonds for men's clothing. And, you had so it was the city stores. And they said sometimes like Austinites or West Garfield Park folks or people might go west instead of east, instead of going to all the State Street stores. Oh, I can go to Fields there.
I mean, you're real close. I mean, like it's closer. If you're in Austin, I mean, it much rather come out this way instead of go almost 10 miles to the center.
And I think that's really true about our connectedness. I mean, again, that's why I try to hesitate, even though my day job is the director of Oak Park River Forest Museum. I still you see the connections, and I think sometimes we don't want to be so narrow. Like there is connections. Obviously Oak Park River Forest, we do that kind of history together, but we're touching Berwyn and Cicero still on our south border. River Forest touches Maywood, and Oak Park and River Forest, besides touching Chicago on the east and the north side of Oak Park, you also touch Elmwood Park, right?
Yep.
And so, sometimes neighbors, and I think there's a lot of extended family. Oh, my brother lives in Forest Park.
Yeah.
We also touch Forest Park. My cousin lives in, 2 towns over. Because I think sometimes people it doesn't always happen, but people who live in the west side sometimes come out to the west suburbs if they're looking for a suburban lifestyle. Yeah. Or people who grew up in Rogers Park sometimes move to Evanston. You kind of get the nearby area,
Yep.
And I think there's a lot of that kind of connectedness that I'll tell you some more Oak Park trivia and say how great Oak Park River Forest is. Yeah. But I get all these other towns have their own histories, and we're connected in a way that we shouldn't be like too much, too over proud of any one town. I like the regional approach to things, because we all should take advantage of more here in Chicago. Everything Chicago has to offer, and sometimes you hear people like, I haven't been downtown in decades. It's like, what?
Yeah, right. Yeah,
it's like, it's nice to be connected and kind of know that there's different things. Every community is not like a little island. Which is important.
Yeah. Well, you gave us a whole bunch. Let me tell you, because this is a wormhole about that. I feel like we're about to go down. I already got a connection that I think we could explore. Murs Apothecary with Juliet Percy Julian. So he, right around that time frame, there was a Pullman Porter worker they didn't know at the time, glaucoma. And there was a doctor, Murs Apothecary, who, I don't know if you know Murs Apothecary.
That's familiar, yeah.
Yeah, it's 150 years old, and they're in Lincoln Square. We did research that
the optometrist
for
the Pullman Porters, his son became a pharmacist and opened Murs Apothecary. And so
the catch is that he realized, wait a minute, we can cure him of this, what is glaucoma now.
Yeah.
Where did he get that cure from?
It was like in the 30s or something.
Yeah.
And that's around the time.
And as soon as you said that, I'm like, I wonder if we researched if he got information from Percy Julian.
Yeah. And one of the things about Julian, besides some like real like breakthroughs, there are some existing compounds that were just really, they call it like synthesizing proteins in the building blocks, like amino acids and stuff. You synthesize that, and then you can make the drug you need from those proteins. And they were like synthesizing things from like the kind of rare compounds.
Yeah.
And he came to Indiana to go to college from Alabama, and he was kind of some of his past was agrarian. So he started looking at soybeans. He realized the types of proteins in soybeans, because soybeans are a form of protein, right? Yeah. That you could like make quantities of drugs at a real affordable thing. So that rheumatoid arthritis had been a cure, but it was like, I'm making this the exact number up, but this much is going to cost you $200 kind of thing. Yeah. And it was able to like mass produce it using the chemistry that he developed. So I wouldn't surprise me. And glaucoma was another one of the things that he really made a big stride forward. Yeah. And the thing about Dr. Julian then is now, he was very aware and tied to his roots in his community. He lived in Maywood for 20 years before he moved to Oak Park. Maywood always had a sort of a strong Black community. It was always racially integrated, but had a Black neighborhood and community there too. And people like some of the Chicago Defender and Black publications, took a special pride in these, like we all do, that people are particularly successful and like a role model. Yeah. And so people were very aware of these stories, what Julian was doing, because I think it was for people of any color, background, race, creed, or color, should have been proud and happy that there's like breakthroughs in a medical sense. Yeah. But particularly if it's like, that's my people or somebody at connection. Right. Yeah. And I think that's it was funny. One of the letters, not funny but sad, but funny in a weird sort of way is like even when Dr. Julian's house got attacked, somebody wrote a letter and said, in like the local paper, and said, I don't know who did this, but would you not accept the treatment for glaucoma or rheumatoid arthritis if you found that the scientist's color of the skin wasn't to your liking?
Exactly.
Right. And so I think sometimes accomplishments like Julian did also just help, just the right thing to do anyway, but it helps people really break through and go, oh, okay.
Yeah.
What? Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I need you. Yeah.
Yeah, we need each other. Right?
Yeah. Thanks for helping me.
Yeah.
I feel like we could talk for
Yeah.
52 million hours
You know,
about all of this, but
It's cool that this is the start of Oak Park and beyond. So, like, this is
beyond.
Yeah, this is a great. So we're just so you know, we're naming 77 for these next several episodes, 77 and beyond. So yeah, we've changed our name temporarily.
just for the next few episodes.
This is gonna be fun.
Yeah.
we got like to Frank. Thank you so much for being
It's
here.
my pleasure. And anytime we can, have any questions, it doesn't have to be a formal show. If there's anything I can help with, or we can help with here, love to do that.
Oh yeah, you'll be back on here because I got questions. Thank you so much.
Well, going and sorry, it took you so many directions, but it's this stuff is exciting. I'm one of those people who's lucky enough to work in a field that you actually enjoy a lot.
Yeah.
There's some people who just have to do the job.
Yeah.
And not as much into the content, but it's fun. I mean, it is storytelling, right?
Yeah, it's storytelling. It's storytelling, and it's like the exploration of it.
Yeah.
You're putting these stories together that we know over the last 5 years, what you tell us, and now let's go out into the field.
As I mentioned earlier, when we first kind of came into we worked out this deal with the Villageville Park that we would renovate it and raise the money to do so. And so when we did that, we were to a little bit of a leap of faith because we couldn't see stuff like underneath the walls. There was like drop ceilings and some areas you couldn't see too well. We knew all the utilities, like the electrical and plumbing stuff needed to be replaced. But one day I came in and they were demolishing, just kind of prying old drywall off the ceiling, and underneath it there was half exposed a circle, where the frame was, where one of the fire pole hole was, and then later on we found the second fire pole hole. And since we decided to not make this like a firehouse museum per se, it's about Oak Park River Forest, not just about the firefighting aspect of it, but we said we got to put a fire pole back. So just a couple years ago now, we put a fire pole back in the one hole. We left the other one open. And so at this point, it was so fun. And actually, we dedicated, I slid down. I borrowed from the local gymnastics center so I wouldn't break my ankle. So that was fun. But actually, during the process of construction, I was mentioning earlier, a floor guy, Elm Flooring in River Forest, he actually was from Poland originally. And he said, these floors are so beat up, but they're cool wood. And long story short, he ended up we gave him permission to pry up a board. And he's like, look at the underside. And so that's what you finished, was the underside of the board. So essentially, the other thing I didn't tell you yet, but I'll just show you. Oh, and this is what I was talking about, how Dan was punching out like the scrap wood so that we could fill in the screw holes. But what I didn't tell you fully, to get too complicated, but I'll just tell you now because it's right here, is we ran out of some of the original wood after doing 3/4 of the space. And there's a place in the Calumet City area, or actually Lake Calumet area, it's still in the borders of Chicago, and they have like essentially a sawmill still. Like they said their last sawmill in Chicago, and they had like a bunch of different like types of wood, and they harvest it. This is called number 2 grade pine, and what they did is when we ran out of woods right in this area, from here to the wall is new wood, but this had to be stained to match this. That side of the room, or 3/4 of the room, is just the original wood with polyurethane to preserve it and to put a coating. This had to have just a little bit of color added because you could see it was new wood. So the difference between 1898 wood versus wood that had been darkening, underneath for all these decades. So that was the other kind of fun thing about this whole project is we didn't know exactly what we'd find underneath, and we knew we'd find some things. We also found like a horse buggy, because this is horse-drawn wagon, so we found horse buggy. We found a little like wheat chaff, because the horses stayed in the back of the building, and there was in one of the joists, they must have used it as kind of a grain bin. And so it was, and we put on display here like a few of the original like really long nails that held the floor together. So it's fun for us, like our home, our headquarters, the museum, that the building itself is like part of the story. And I think the overall Oak Park River Forest stories we're trying to tell, that's what we're leading with. It's not just about the firehouse, but it's kind of great. People don't know it's an old firehouse. When they come in, they go, oh, check this out. And we were concerned, I mentioned earlier, the fire department initially, or like the code people are like, I don't know, there's fire code about like how much wood you have exposed. But luckily, because we were putting all new sprinklers in, that was able to, to make it safe. So if we hadn't put sprinklers in, we might have had to cover up a lot of the wood, for fire safety. So, yeah, it's a great story.
That was so good. I hope you loved it as much as I did.
Yes.
I really do.
Yes.
Because
Frank got energy, boy.
yeah, it was. I could have talked to him for like 50 more hours.
Yeah.
And you can tell that like we were enjoying it because we weren't saying anything.
Yeah.
I was just sitting there like listening,
Well, you know what was going
and
through
I'm
my
like, please tell me more.
You know what was going through my head? What was going through my head was the connections to everything that we already talked about in Chicago,
Yeah.
how it actually affected what he was talking about.
Right.
When you talked about the train station, Galena. I knew that. We talked about that. We did a whole episode
Right.
on that. How that train rail line came to be. What was that, 3 years ago now?
Yeah.
We talked about that.
Yeah. 3 years.
And then the annexation of how that happened. We did a
Right.
whole thing. We talked about Austin. You know what I mean? Like, so that's what was going through my mind. And then at the same time, like, he know a lot.
He knows a lot.
Like he know a lot.
Yeah.
And that was his energy. Is that what we look like?
I don't know.
Is that what
I
we
guess
look?
all history nerds that hyperfixate on something
Yeah.
probably sound the
Yeah.
same.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Just like,
Just rattling
like,
off stuff.
yeah, just really. Here's the thing: you don't want to be in a car ride with us if you don't want to learn,
No.
because there's no room for you to speak, and it's educational the whole way.
Put us, Jeffrey Bear, Frank Lipo. I'm gonna throw Bonnie in there. Bonnie
Kevin.
McDonald, Kevin.
From South Cook
South Cook.
Explorers.
That
I
car
mean-
ride, earmuffs the whole time.
Yeah.
You're gonna get annoyed. You're gonna get
I
annoyed.
don't think so. I would love that car.
Oh,
ride.
we would love it. Of
That
course we
dream
would.
blunt rotation right there. But the blunt is historical fact.
Yeah. There you go.
As someone that does not partake,
Yeah.
I need it to be rolled up historical fact.
That's
Can you imagine?
Yeah. Sponsored
Sick.
episodes always go crazy.
I know.
We love
Whoops.
it.
All right. Well, thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. There is next week is Hillside, so you'll learn a little bit more about Hillside. We interview Mayor Tamburino.
Yes.
Phenomenal guy, by the way. And I can't wait for you to hear that one.
Ooh, we got a lot of work to do.
Yeah,
I'm loving this.
I know.
This is good.
If you did enjoy this episode, please share it with someone you love. You can leave us a review too. We'd love to hear from you, only if it's positive. I'm just playing. Email us if it's negative. Leave it publicly if it's positive. It takes 5 seconds. It really helps push our stuff out there for more people to find it. But that is all I have for you today.
Oak Park and Beyond. Thank you. We appreciate y'all.
We'll see you next week. Peace. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode, and we hope you loved it.
And if you could please follow us on social media at 77 Flavors Shy on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and Twitter.
If you have any ideas or deep dives that you'd love us to do, please contact us at media@77flavorsshy. That's the number 77 flavors and shy for Chicago.com.
If you like visuals, please subscribe and follow and watch us on our YouTube channel at the same thing, 77 Flavors Shy. Or search 77 Flavors of Chicago.
If you would like to support us monetarily, go ahead and click that Buzzsprout link in the description of this episode.
And as always, we gonna see you next week. Peace.